Hello and welcome to The Moment. Today we're going to talk about the forest, the ecosystems of the forest to be specific, and the future of food. But before we go and continue with this, I would like to talk a bit about The Moment. So The Moment is a podcast in which anyone can join. And in that sense, you only need a Discord account and join the Fox Den. And then you can just suggest a topic, or you can join in on an existing topic that will be posted in the Fox Den before. And then you can just join and be part of this if you want to be. But yeah, that's all about that for now. Let's let's start and begin with the topic. Maybe you take it away.
Yeah, hey. I suggested this topic because I think it's a very, very important topic. And there's so many ways to approach this subject, but let's choose one for now. So I believe, and I'm not the only one, I believe that the forests and the ecosystems are our home. We need them, not the other way around so much. But kind of, we could help the ecosystems a lot too, but it seems like there's like a disconnect a lot in modern times in the thinking that we seem to want to control nature, and instead of these complex and maybe in our eyes chaotic systems of the ecosystem, instead of those we have these monoculture crops of food and trees for fuel. And it's not at all the same as to have a diverse system going with different plants having different niches and functions in that system, which makes it thrive, and the different parts help each other out. Of course, there's also competition in nature, but there is a lot of cooperation too. And I think that is forgotten too many times, and we need to remember that again.
I think that there is just for quite some time this tendency for control, not just with nature but like overall, that going on. Something that stems from the way that that people view things, their lens of viewing things. And I think that in that sense it could like blind one to other perspectives such as this. But I do think that these type of perspectives were more common in the past. But yeah, that kind of we started to see ourselves separate from the ecosystem, and somehow started to like be this separate being that is not really part of nature anymore. But in that sense, we really are, because you cannot take, or like we cannot take ourselves out of the ecosystem in that sense. because I mean we're all connected to it in one manner or the other, even if like we might go from one continent to another or whatever, but we still in that sense I think need that as an important base for things. And I don't know, like I've looked into the type of people that then think that they can do things like solely alone, like humanity can do it solely alone. We can build machines that make oxygen and do all kinds of things. But I think in that sense what gets forgotten in that is that there's way more towards the connection with nature than just the crude function of it. There's something like way more going on there, I think.
Yes, I really believe that too. And it has a lot to do also with our well-being and our mental health. That when we are surrounded by a forest or an ecosystem, our 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 nervous system actually calms down in that environment just naturally, and that might be part of why there is such a rise in mental health emergencies all over, because we have a lot less forests and functioning ecosystems around. There's a massive amount of just fields, and a lot of people live in cities. They don't even see the fields. And I think it's time we realize that we need to reforest some of that land for our mental health, for our well-being, and also for to stabilize weather patterns, which that would also help with, to keep the water in the landscape and not running off, creating floods. And that's another part of this question.
Yeah, but it just reminds me of the Netherlands, where I'm originally from, with like their approach to what they call nature and what is kind of happening there. And the thing is that it really is, yeah, the disconnect with nature really makes one also in that sense feel alone. And I've noticed myself that by reconnecting with nature more, this sense of being alone in on the world, for me at least, has become much less. And yeah, and also back in the Netherlands, there were those floods that were going on there, and you had much more going on too, like the fires, the droughts, and a lot of like effects just from how the land was treated. And there, for instance, since the Middle Ages, they basically started to like slowly drain the swamps and cut down all the forests, mostly for ships at first, and later for burning wood too. And they started to clear it for agriculture. And at some point they were like going so intensively that it then became like all sand, and a lot of the forest or they're gone now. And the thing is that um, it used to be like in Europe in general, it used to be something around like 70% a forest, and in the Netherlands it used to be a bit less. There used to be those like swampy areas where there wouldn't be really a lot of forest, but overall there used to be a lot of forest still, and for instance like oak forests, for instance, like one area that was that became almost it became a desert in that sense, and the sand started to spread everywhere. And the thing is that the lack of those trees now there is causing like the droughts and the floods too. But not much is really done in that sense to like mitigate it, because they're, the nature conservative people that are operating there seem to have this idea of controlling things still. It seems to be really like some deeper a deeper thing going on regarding that. But at the same time, there's some like a massive mental health problem too, and especially during like the whole COVID pandemic. It started to become more and more obvious, and like a lot of people couldn't deal with things anymore. They didn't have anywhere to go to calm down, and then they just spiraled. So that kind of like to me it kind of like laid that bare, that like, yeah, there's like a lot of stress going on here, and like a lot of people are stressed out of their minds. And yeah, it's and yeah, it's just, it's a real shame that things are done that way. Well, or like, one could work together with nature in that sense, instead of trying to control it, to give like nature its place.
Yeah. I know for me, throughout my life, when I have had difficulties, I've always found solace in the forests, just taking walks and being there with the trees and the birds and the moss. And I do like hope that everyone would have that opportunity to, close to where they live, to access some forest paths. I do think that that would help a lot. I know it's helped me a lot.
Yeah, but then the question becomes then like, how do we yeah like how do we reintegrate that back, and then also the problem becomes like, how do we bridge that so that it's not like viewed under the guise of control. Like how can we bridge that. And then it makes me like kind of also think about like permaculture, like maybe that's like a possible bridge, like so we can like bridge like the at least the fields and nature more, and maybe like that spirals out to the cities too. Like what do you think about that and like permaculture?
Yes, I've looked into permaculture somewhat through documentaries and looking online, and I really like the way they're thinking, as in they are trying to mimic natural ecosystems and then also taking into account what we humans need. So some food plants are in that system too, but also adding to it my mineral accumulators and beneficial insect attractors and plants like that into that same area so that it works better together than just having one thing growing or such. So it's like a diverse garden with plants with different functions together working. And I do think that that's a very nice model to work with. And I'm trying to do something like that on a small scale myself too. And I guess with cities, you might go for some community projects would probably be work well there to have some community gardens where people could come together and do something together that's good for the whole community.
So you mean like something along the lines of having like a communal permaculture garden or something along those lines?
Yes, of course, like different locations would the gardens in different locations look very different because you have to take into consideration the local climate. What are the local species that work well there, and then making it. It's always for the site specific, and you look at the site and see how the waterfall comes and then how to distribute that and get it to soak into the ground. And it's very fascinating to look at. Also, what is important, I believe, in the future and now, and like to that we have to kind of start to shift a bit, is like where the food we eat needs to be more local, because it doesn't make sense much what we're doing right now, that stuff is shipped for long distances. And I get it for some specific like things that are not able to grow everywhere, and that you'd then ship those to where people want to buy them. But I do feel like that it would be better for the environment and for people that the food would come from closer by, maybe from some small farms. Um, and I do think that that would be more like secure too, and you could maybe even go see like how it is grown, and then feel more confident about the food, that it's actually grown in a way that takes into consideration nature and it is sustainable in that sense.
Yeah, and in that regard, like I've started to look myself into it as well regarding like like what one could call a food forest, and from what I've seen is that it's not like like the monocrop thing. You just get a whole bunch of one thing, but you get something of like a whole diverse set of things that you harvest. But it's like a system that's regenerative, like it regenerates itself, and that could be or like I can see it being used by people to produce their own food for themselves, to be able to like be more self-reliant in that sense, and at the same time also to be able to produce food to like a more diverse source of food within the land, and also like something that uses more layers and doesn't require all kinds of chemicals to be used. But I think you said also one time something about regenerative farming, I think.
Yeah, there's a movement called regenerative agriculture, and it is farmers that have been like noticed that the conventional synthetic um, fertilizer type of farming was starting to not work for them anymore, uh, after I think probably decades. But at some point they just saw that their land was degraded and they wanted to try something else. So there've been also people making in what do you call it, investigating, no, studying what would sequester carbon better, and like uh, and it seems to be that the synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and stuff that they use, those actually harm the microbiology in the soil, which is like in in healthy soil there's a whole bunch of life that actually works together with the plants that are grown there. And to ways to protect this microbiology is to not till the land, so not to like turn it over, because they then that life becomes exposed to the sun, and it likes to stay underground. And another thing that you can do is to keep plants growing there, because when you have living plants, you also they are working together with the microbiology, so they're keeping each other healthy and alive. And also there was some studies about that if you had a diverse set of plants growing in a space, instead of just one kind of plant, that they found that it sequesters more carbon from the air. So it's more of a carbon sink if they have diverse different kinds of plants growing. So that's very interesting too, and that is one more thing to add to why it's so important to have diversity. It seems like it really helps that part of the issue too.
Kind of makes me also think about what you just said about the diverse plants, about something in the Netherlands that used to be done more traditionally there, and it was that I think it is birch trees, but also some alder trees and different types of trees like that. But also certain bushes used to be used as a border on the land. Um, Currently, most of what like nature conservative people say about those things is like for the birds that it's very good. Um, in that sense, and for wildlife to like move around. But from what I've seen is that it helps the land also.
Yeah, I've read about birch and alder. I think that they both were some sort of mineral accumulator, or was alder even a nitrogen fixer? Yeah. So it's very useful plants to have. They're pioneer plants called also some places. It's because they when they lose their leaves for the winter, those leaves then help protect the soil and give it nutrients for the next season of yeah. And there are like different other plants too that have deep tap roots that people think of as weeds or things like that, but actually they are helping to bring nutrients from deep in the ground to the topsoil layer, so that it is useful for plants that don't have as deep roots. And in that way, they help out the whole system, actually.
Yeah, like similarly to like the mushrooms too, and the trees. You probably mean like similar idea there to that, like what is going on with certain types of mushrooms and trees, how they're like interconnected.
Well, that's even a little bit different, but the idea, I guess, is the same, that they're working together. As the mushrooms can provide the trees with minerals and such from the deep from the ground that the trees can't make themselves, and the trees pay for it by giving some sugars that they make with the photosynthesis in exchange for the mushrooms then. But that's a very cool thing too, and I think that they also send messages, the trees, to each other through this mycelial network. So that's the fungal network in the soil, and that those are also part of the microbiology in the soil that I mentioned, the fungus there, which helps keep moisture and divides moisture around in the soil, so it doesn't just stay in one place, and it like is distributed broadly too by them.
I've also because of my study that I used to do with regarding to soil, um, looked at mushrooms myself and the network, and from what I have seen is that um, that they together with other plants to like for instance nettle have like a lot of good qualities regarding bettering the soil as well, to take care of certain things within the soil. And well, specifically nettle and such type of plants with regarding I think it was certain heavy metals that were somewhere in the soil because of some industrial pollution that were being used to like get to try to get it out of the soil. Well, they were using some other like stuff too, though, next to it. But yeah. But then regarding that with the trees, I've heard something, or well, read something with regards to the trees communicating that that some of the trees, if they get sick of something like some type of disease or some insects, that they warn the other trees to so they start producing some of the chemicals that they can release that keeps them healthy. Well, and next to that, also that the bigger trees like can help the younger ones too. But then that is something that I have like noticed in the Netherlands also a lot with regarding the like some of the nature areas that they're like doing, or like they're like doing a lot of things to keep it in place, and then they're disrupting the mushrooms constantly. I mean, I think that must have quite some effect on the plants and the trees too. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I think it has an effect. And I'm also worried about it, that they are using even in forests nowadays, when they are like fertilizing forests too. And I think that they are using the synthetic kind, and that's not good for the mushrooms that are growing there. That is actually like poison for them. So that is very concerning. So instead, they should plant those mineral accumulating trees and nitrogen fixers to fertilize the land, instead of these synthetic things that are not really helping us on the long term at all.
Yeah, and then the next to that, like I kind of feel like if we like interact with, or like yeah, with it too much on a too large scale, try to do something in the forest or like within nature, that we kind of end up doing more harm than good. It's like, I don't know, like it makes me think of for instance, clear cuts, or for instance, in the Netherlands, that they have whole areas that are forests, kind of quote unquote, that are basically the same type of mono trees being grown in the same area, and then they just cut them all down in one big swoop. They're like gone, all cut. And the thing is that, I don't know, like long term, that probably is not a good idea to keep doing that.
Yeah, it will then expose the soil, a big area of soil at once, for direct sunlight, and that will disturb the microbiology a lot. And then it would be, well, at least very important to plant something new immediately, so that maybe some of that life in the soil will survive too. But it would be much better to do it like gradually, not everything at once. If we think of it a bit broader than just making a profit, then yeah, we wouldn't be doing it that way, I would think, with all the things we know. It's also about like habitat for animals too. If we clear cut big areas specifically, then that's not at all good for for the animals, and specifically like old growth forest, which is like there's not much left anymore. Most of it really is like fields of trees, which is kind of sad. And then we still see even governments cutting down these beautiful old forests that are like a habitat for endangered species, and they still do it. And I just find that so sad.
Yeah, kind of reminds me of like the big problems in the Netherlands, that like a lot of I think it was rodents, but also squirrels and other like small animals and foxes and owls, that don't have any space anymore, and then they're all like, well, the farmers are saying that the mice and all those like little rodent type creatures are all like vermin infesting the fields, eating the monocrop fields empty, and complaining about that. And there's been like many plagues of them, and what kind of is happening there is that they're starting to like move into the cities, because, well, that's where the food is. And that, yeah, there have been like squirrels and other animals in people's attic now, and roaming the cities. And there was some agency there saying like, well, we can't use any poison on them anymore, so we can't like kill them all. But at the same time, then at the same time, farmers were like going towards flooding fields to kill off the mice and stuff. And I'm just looking at that like, I don't know, maybe these animals need a home, maybe. And yeah, I don't know, it's just that it just gets so out of whack. But I think it's also just connected to in the Netherlands specifically, with the whole obsession with heather fields and all kinds of other weird shit, that they cannot leave it alone enough, even though they have come over the years more to their senses in some areas, at least, with some organizations that leave certain areas be, and they're like trying to retreat out of that. Like there are some like private organizations that are doing that, even though like the government one, at least in the Netherlands, is still like messing heavily with it, like maintaining all the trees, cutting them, and doing a lot of stuff that I think kind of is unnecessary, like taking out the fallen over trees and stuff like that. And it's like, maybe like with roads, yeah, but like deeper in, I don't know. I I think that's gonna do more harm than good.
Yeah, actually, it is beneficial to have like dead trees lying around, even though you might not think that, but yeah, because some species of mushrooms feed on decomposing wood, and that is good because to have those mushrooms, because then uh, that fertility then goes back into the soil when it's broken down. And yeah, it's actually even, yeah, it is advised to keep some of the fallen trees at least there because of that.
But in that sense, then, aren't you then, if you like in the Netherlands, like in some areas where they would then take it away mostly, aren't you then technically taking away some of that fertility of the land if you just drag it all to like a dump or like somewhere else?
Yeah, and the ecosystem as a whole is then not as functional.
But then I think looking at all of these things, um, coming back to like permaculture and the stuff that you mentioned about the the food being more local. Um, could you elaborate on that maybe more?
Yeah, so the topic was the future of food, but the future of food I feel like is kind of more like the past of food. Like it used to be more local. The there are a lot of traditions that have gardens going, like for families have gardens and stuff like that. So I do think that that's part of it, at least that that there will be more of that, that people in their close to their homes would start more gardens, and if they do it with the permaculture food forest gardening style, that would be awesome, because then that would also support the surrounding ecosystems on that land, and there would be like more of a plant cover, which is what we want, so that the soil is protected, and that so that carbon is drawn out from the atmosphere and into the living things, and then into the food, and then we can enjoy the food and the beautiful surroundings. And we'll also plant a lot of flowers for the bees, which we need for pollinating. I think it's more than half of everything we eat. We need the bees for, so that's very important that we have habitat for them too.
Kind of with regards to gardens, reminds me of some of the local projects that are going on, at least in the Netherlands, in certain cities where they're trying to get people to have gardens again instead of just stone and concrete. Um, but I think that in that regard, it just it doesn't just create habitat for the animals too, because I've seen it myself by creating back in the Netherlands the garden space, like for the birds and the insects and different um, little critters in that sense, but also in a broader sense, that if that's more done, it regulates the temperature also differently, because if it's like mostly concrete and brick and it gets very hot. And I've really noticed that in the city where I was living, because there were certain areas where most people were participating in the project that was being done there by some organization, and they started to all have gardens there. And there were other areas where none, or like almost no one, did it, and you could really feel the difference in the summer especially. And yeah, I think that it makes things better for animals, but it makes the planet more habitable and better for people too, just to create that space for, well, for nature outside of the cities, but also like inside of the cities to bring like plants back. And the thing is that what you brought up there with permaculture and that type of technique, I think that a lot of people would probably really like that, because the main reason why most people have gone now to concrete and all those stones and all those things, because they're quite some years ago I did with the university something where we're interviewing a lot of people about those things, because we wanted to get people interested in having a garden again, and maybe participating in a community permaculture project. And what kind of most of the people there said was that the main reason why really they had the stone and concrete in their garden to begin with was because of how much work it took to take care of the garden, to maintain it. And I think having that approach from permaculture, where the it's more of a system that can take care of itself, would make things much easier for the people. I think that switch of perspective would be really good.
Yeah, I like your example that you brought up with the microclimate that it makes it cooler in the area where there are trees and stuff like that. Yeah. And yeah, the idea with the permaculture food forest is that it will be more independent than an typical garden, I guess, in a sense. But of course, it takes some time to get it going, and you will have to look after the plants in the beginning when they're small and more susceptible to pests or rabbits or such. But in a few years, it will take more care of itself already, and then later you'll be just able to sometimes do some maintenance and maybe change some things up, but like mostly just harvesting all the goodies. Also came to think of now about another factor, which is that I do think that how it is now, there's like a lot of big agricultural companies that are doing a lot of these monocrops on the fields. And I do believe that it would probably be more sustainable if we did it more like smaller farms and doing it less with machinery and doing it with the permaculture systems. And that would probably mean that we would need a new generation of farmers, because I don't think there are right now that like many that we would need in that kind of system with smaller farms. But I do see that there is a movement of people doing this already in some degree, and that's very nice to see. I guess also in a way I'm wondering like if there will be a need for more people to move to the countryside to make this shift happen.
Well, I know that, for instance, in the Netherlands, there are areas of the countryside that are, they're like entire villages that have been basically abandoned or abandoned. Well, everyone died, and all the kids moved to the cities and stuff like that. But I think, yeah, I don't know, like with farming, a lot of the monocropping that is being done is done in the sense of being, I guess, profitable. It's kind of like the like a big idea regarding that. And we used to have like a lot of small farms, for instance, in the Netherlands too, but it's been becoming just bigger and bigger, and like old farmers that had died and had no like kids to take over from them. Most of that land then gets bought up by either some company or like or some other farmer that then adds to it. And I think that I don't know, like the system kind of needs to be rethought in some sense, because if you look at it without the like a lot of the subsidies from Europe, a lot of the farmers could not really how they would call it, compete with the other areas much. And I think maybe like that needs to be like completely revisited. And the thing is that if you would be doing things in multiple layers, and you wouldn't need the machines, which saves money, and you wouldn't need all those chemicals, which saves a lot of money, you would be able to produce better better food that takes less effort in that sense, to do it, and less money in that sense too. So I mean, I don't know, like I wouldn't know myself about like how that would impact it exactly, but I've seen some studies that are being done in the Netherlands regarding the food forests. And it was there were like multiple of those that were visited, and I think it was 8 to 10 years or so that they were viable for production, meaning they would start earning money on it for like producing food. So it's like profitable to do it in that sense. But, it takes time, but then once you get it going, it can be like an alternative from what those studies showed.
Yeah, seems very, very nice. Because even though it takes time to set it up, then it will keep on giving for a long time, if you like. Just keep a little bit of an eye on it, or have your hedges established to to protect it from the deer and such. But I do believe that this is part of the answer for the future.
And in that sense, with what you said regarding the past, also a reconnection to the past as well, because what that with the past brings to mind is like what the Native American people did, but also the ancient Romans and different cultures did regarding doing either certain rituals, or just purposefully planting certain trees at certain places to create these type of like food forest settings. Even though from what I have seen myself, from looking into this, it is that you already had the forest, basically the old growth forest, and they just added on top of that with the other trees, which then also benefited the animals too. And I don't know, like I kind of have that feeling with the old oak forests in the Netherlands too. That there may be some similar past to that. That maybe, because it's not that it's not really that far fetched if you like look at like the old cultures, like how they interacted with things. There was this like idea of well, we have all this food, so let's go and be grateful and thankful for this food, and then they gave back towards nature in that sense. And in that sense, they were also then planting certain types of trees, and like spreading certain types of seeds. And yeah, that did a lot for yeah, for different animals too. and then for people too.
Beautiful. Yeah. Of course, I can only speak for myself, but even if there was a future without the forests and the ecosystems, then I wouldn't want to go down that path. I would want to go together with the plants, with the trees, with the animals, and build a better world for all of us. Also, the mushrooms and the bees and the insects. Let's bring everyone and have a big party.
If you don't have anything more to say, because I don't really have much more to add to this, then I think we probably could wrap this up, this talk, like, and end on that good note.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, then that's it for this talk, and maybe see one of you on this talk yourself, maybe. Okay, bye. See you in the den.